What's up, guys? It's the Average Fight Fan here, aka Scotty 2 Hockey, in case you couldn't tell by my background. But let's get into some UFC picks. UFC 236, headlined by Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway in the main event for the interim title, lightweight title, excuse me. And then in the co-main event, we have Israel Adesanya, the stylebender, versus the hype train killer, Kelvin Gastelum, the youngest tough winner ever, and the guy who should have fought for the title against Robert Whittaker before Robert Whittaker got injured. But that's other news, because now we're on to UFC 236, and we have ourselves a very exciting card. But let's get into the beginning of the card. The first fight on the main card is against Ovince St. Preux versus Nikita Krylov. Don't know a lot about Krylov. I've only seen him ever fight twice in the UFC. Seems to be predominantly a striker to me. Doesn't seem to be the best wrestler. As for St. Preux, he can strike. He's very unorthodox striking. He started off great in the UFC. But he does have a good wrestling game, and he does have a good ground game, and he does have the ability to choke people out. He's the Von Blue choke king in the UFC. After a good start in the UFC and getting a title shot against John Jones, which he lost, I believe it was an interim title shot if I'm not mistaken, but he ended up losing that fight. Ever since then, it's been kind of downhill for Ovince St. Preux. He hasn't had the same kind of hype he has, and he's dropped in the rankings. Anyways, let's get into the numbers. Ovince St. Preux is 23-12-0. His last 5 fights, he's 3-2-0. His notable wins in the UFC are against Shogun Rua, Tyson Pedro, and Corey Anderson. He's ranked number 12 in the light heavyweight division. His biggest losses in the UFC are to John Jones, of course, Jimmy Manuwa, Glover Teixeira. He lost to Dominic Reyes in his last fight, and he's also lost to Uzmir. Krylov is 24-6-0. His last 5, he's 3-2-0. His only notable win I could see in the UFC was against Ed Herman with a nice KO. He's unranked in the light heavyweight division. He lost his last fight to Jan Blachowicz, and he's a striker who trains out of Russia. In this fight, I'm going to have to go with the old guy, the guy with more experience, Ovince St. Preux. I just feel he has the better game. I have a feeling he's going to initiate his unorthodox, weird striking, eventually get a clinch, get hands on Krylov, get him to the ground or get him up against the cage, and take him down and submit him. I got a feeling Ovince St. Preux is going to win by early second round submission, possibly late first round after wearing this guy down on the ground for a bit. But I have a feeling Ovince St. Preux is going to get an arm, he's going to get a Kimura, or he's going to get his back and get a rear naked choke. But I have a feeling Ovince St. Preux is going to use his weird unorthodox striking to back this guy up, eventually get him up against the cage, clinch him, take him down, and choke him out. That's just how I feel it's going to go. So Ovince St. Preux, second round submission for that fight. Next up, we have Alan Jouban versus Benny Siegel, and I could not find anything about this Benny Siegel guy at all. I've seen a few highlights of him fighting. He doesn't seem to be up to Alan Jouban's level of striking to me. I haven't seen much from him in the wrestling department. He's listed as a striker. I could be wrong. I haven't seen a lot about this guy. I've seen a ton of Jouban, though. Jouban has fallen off a bit since he's a good hot UFC star himself. After losing to Gunnar Nelson, he's had a couple of controversial fights, but he did have a big win over Mike Perry. We got Alan Jouban with a 16-6-0 record. His last 5 fights, he's 3-2-0. His notable wins are over Ben Saunders and Mike Perry. He's unranked in the welterweight division. And then we have Benny Siegel, who's 9-2-0. His last 5 fights, he's 4-1-0. I can't find any notable wins for the guy, and he's unranked also in the welterweight division. And I'm going to have to go with Jouban. He just seems to be a better striker. He has more UFC experience, and overall, he just seems to be the better fighter. This kind of seems like an easy fight for Jouban to me. I could be wrong, don't get me wrong, but from what I've seen of this guy, he doesn't seem up to Jouban's level, and I'm going to go Jouban, first round head kick TKO. He's going to use that nice kickboxing. He got bang, knocked Benny Siegel out with a first round head kick TKO. That's the Average Fight Fan's prediction. And if you've seen my UFC London picks, I'm no expert when it comes to predicting, that's for sure. I do know quite a bit about these fighters, yes, most of them at least, but as far as predicting who's going to win, it's up in the air these days. Who's seen Jorge Masvidal KOing Darren Till like that? Because I certainly didn't, and if you go watch my UFC London picks video, you'll understand why. Next up, we have Eryk Anders, a guy who's kind of come on some rough times himself after having a great MMA record to start off with, and but his 2 losses in the UFC are against big names. And then we have Cahill Roundtree, Johnny Walker's last victim, and he doesn't have a very big MMA record, not a great MMA record by no means either. Eryk Anders is 11-3-0. His last 5, he's 2-3-0, but out of those last 5, he lost to Machida and Santos. So those are some big names to lose to. Thiago Santos and Lyoto Machida, those are no joke. Those are top dogs right there. Machida obviously isn't in the UFC anymore, but he still is a top dog when it comes to fighting. He's unranked in the light heavyweight division, obviously, and he has 2 losses in a row, unfortunately. Cahill Roundtree, Johnny Walker's last victim. He's 7-3-0. His last 5, he's 3-1-1. One of them is a no contest. And his biggest win, it's not a huge name in MMA, but it's a huge name in the kickboxing world. And anybody who's a huge fan of fighting in general knows this name. His biggest win is against Gokhan Saki. That's a nice win to have on your resume. His rank, he's unranked in the light heavyweight division, and he's also coming off a loss, that elbow TKO, first round of Johnny Walker at UFC Fight Night 140. In this fight, it's a toss-up to me. It's a 50-50 fight, but I'm going to go with Anders. I feel he's the bigger light heavyweight. He looks stronger. He has that big power shot, and I have a feeling Anders is going to catch him. Anders, whatever you want to call him. I call him Anders. Anders is the type of guy who he can catch you early and finish you, but if the fight goes on, he seems to wear out like halfway through the second round. By then, his gas tank pretty much seems to be shot. So this is the type of guy who needs to finish you early. I don't think he's going to get the first round TKO. I got a feeling Roundtree may be a bit careful, especially after getting KO'd by Johnny Walker in the first round. But I have a feeling early second round, he's going to come in refreshed after taking a little minute break between rounds, and he's going to get an early second round KO. So I'm picking Eric Anders to absolutely clean Cahill Roundtree's clock. Not a TKO. A clean KO in the second round, beginning of the second round. And then we get into the fights we're talking about. We've got Israel Adesanya, New Zealand's boy, Nigeria's boy, the hottest prospect / contender in the UFC right now, undefeated, versus Kelvin Gastelum, the former hype train killer, the guy who derailed the Uriah Hall hype train, the youngest Ultimate Fighter winner in history, and has some giant fights himself. He also kind of derailed the Jacare Souza train too. I know Romero did a bit, but Kelvin Gastelum really derailed that hype train. As for Stylebender, he's 16-0-0. His last 5 fights, clearly he's 5-0. He's besides his MMA record, he has a great kickboxing record too. This is strictly MMA record. His notable wins are over Anderson Silva in his last fight, Brad Tavares, Derek Brunson. He's the 5th ranked middleweight in the world, and he's jumped up to a title shot. Kind of surprised me because I was kind of let down by his Silva performance. I thought a younger Adesanya was going to smoke an older Silva, and I'm a huge Anderson Silva fan, but I just felt their styles were too much alike, and Adesanya is younger. He's more powerful. He's fresher. I had a feeling all that was going to work to his advantage, and he was going to finish Anderson Silva. But clearly, Anderson Silva shows he's far from done. He still has a lot in him, and Adesanya had to pull out a pretty hard fight. It wasn't an easy decision by no means. And he's a very unique breed of striker, and I love his distance control. Those are the notes I had written about Israel Adesanya. And then we go on to my boy, Kelvin Gastelum. I love Kelvin Gastelum. He's one of my favorites in the UFC, not just fighters, but one of my favorite personalities. MMA record 16-3-0. His last 5 fights, he's 4-1-0. The one is a loss to Weidman. His notable, and I believe he would beat Weidman now for Fat Weidman. His notable wins are against Michael Bisping, Jacare Souza, Tim Kennedy, and Vitor Belfort. So he has 2 former champs right there on his notable wins that he's beaten. He's ranked 4th at middleweight, 1 ahead of Adesanya, and he's an excellent wrestler with excellent boxing. He doesn't use his wrestling as much as he used to, but when he needs to use it, he's an excellent wrestler. And that's how I think he's going to win this fight. I have a feeling he's eventually going to use his boxing to stay there with Adesanya. He's going to back Adesanya off. I don't see Adesanya coming in doing all kinds of funky stuff using his distance control against Kelvin. He's going to have to back up and pot shot Kelvin, because if he comes in and he tries to get too fancy against Kelvin Gastelum, all it takes is one shot with Kelvin to put you down. He showed that in the Bisping fight. He showed that in the Sosa fight. All it takes is one big left hand, and you are sleeping if Kelvin Gastelum catches you. And I have a feeling Israel Adesanya is eventually going to make a mistake. Kelvin Gastelum is going to get him to the ground, and he's going to beat the living crap out of him on the ground. And I have a feeling Kelvin Gastelum is going to win by 3rd round TKO ground and pound stoppage. Just my opinion. So Gastelum, 3rd round TKO ground and pound stoppage. You got your new interim middleweight champion, Kelvin Gastelum, KG. Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway. My pick for the fight of the night by a mile. We have a guy who's kind of a pace fighter, a guy who likes to use his cardio, his boxing against you, eventually wear you down and get the finish. If not get the finish, get a good decision against a guy like Dustin Poirier, who does carry quite a bit of power at lightweight. He's not exactly a giant knockout fighter, but his all-around game is great. He has a better ground game than Holloway, 100% in my opinion. They're pretty much even on the feet. I don't know who has the better gas tank. They both have good cardio. I'd probably have to give Holloway the edge in that advantage, but the power advantage goes to Dustin, and he has more experience at lightweight. As for Dustin Poirier, he's 5-4-0. He's 4-0-1 in his last 5 fights, One is a no contest to Eddie Alvarez, where he got kneed in the head, and instead of Alvarez getting suspended, or disqualified, it ended up being a no contest. His MMA record is 24-5-1. The one no contest, of course. His notable wins are against Eddie Alvarez, Holloway, and Pettis. He's beat Max Holloway before he submitted him. It was very, very long ago, I believe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. So they were both early in their career. They're both completely different fighters now, and they're both completely on different levels now, so it's going to be a whole different fight in my opinion. Ranked third in the lightweight division, both of these fighters have lost to McGregor, and both have been rock solid since losing to McGregor. I believe Holloway hasn't lost since losing to McGregor, and Poirier only has 1, maybe 2 losses since losing to McGregor, and they're against bigger names. And he has more experience at lightweight. As for Max Holloway, he's 5-0, obviously, in his last 5. He's on a 13-fight win streak. He's the current featherweight champ. His MMA record is 20 wins, 3 losses, 0 no contest draws, none of that. His notable wins are against Jose Aldo, Brian Ortega, those were his last 2 wins. Ricardo Lamas, great fight where they both pointed at the ground, threw it out at the end. Anthony Pettis, that ended up getting stopped because Pettis got hurt. And against Cub Swanson, he's ranked in the featherweight division as the champion, #1 in the featherweight division, #1 featherweight in the world. And he's unranked in the lightweight division because he's yet to fight at lightweight. And he's the current featherweight champion on a 13-fight win streak. My pick for this fight, I'm going to have to go with my boy Dustin. I love Dustin Poirier. He just wants it too much. He has too much heart, and he just seems so hungry for the lightweight title. If Max Holloway loses this, he's still the featherweight champion. He can still move down to featherweight and still be the most dominant featherweight champion of all time if he really wants to do that and not stay up at lightweight. And I have a feeling Dustin Poirier wants that goal too much. You watch his interviews where he talks about his wife driving around in 2006 and promising her one day he's going to bring home a belt and they're going to get married after he wins the belt and all this stuff. Eventually they're married by now, obviously, yes. But Dustin Poirier's story is just great. He's been so close so many times. He's always been a #1 prospect in the UFC. I always knew he was going to be a contender, and I always knew eventually he would fight for a title. And I truly feel if anybody deserves it, it's Dustin Poirier. When he goes on to fight Khabib, I don't think he's going to beat Khabib, but I am picking Dustin Poirier in this in a hard-fought decision. I do not think either guy is going to KO the other guy. I think it's going to be a scrap till the end. Poirier will probably get Holloway down at times, get him in trouble. I don't think he's going to submit him. I think it's going to be a lot of action, and Dustin Poirier will win a 3 rounds to 2 decision, maybe even a split decision. Who knows? But I have a feeling Dustin Poirier is going to win the fight of the night in an absolute war where both of these guys will be beat to a snot by the end of the fight. And at the end of it, Poirier should get his hand raised. That's just my opinion. Anyways, guys, thanks for viewing this video. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to get up to 100 subscribers, so you'd truly be doing me a huge favor if you hit that subscribe button. Ring that bell for my recaps, my reviews, my upcoming UFC videos. I have plenty of MMA content this summer with the NHL season being over, obviously. And feel free to leave a comment, and don't forget to like my video. This is Scotty2Hockey, a.k.a. The Average Fight Fan tonight, with my UFC 230 picks. Go Dustin Poirier, go KG. Let's see this go. State Farm Arena, UFC 236. Picks are in. Scotty2Hockey, a.k.a. The Average Fight Fan, over and out.